while total fertility rates of less than replacement have been achieved in a number of countries, this huge demographic bulge coming through, as we saw in some of the presentations yesterday, mean that the world's population is going to continue to increase for decades. Clearly we have a problem. The solution is many-faceted, and planning has to be long-term, over 100 years. Basically, we're stuck with the 6.8 billion we've got, and we have to find a way to manage that, stabilise that, and reduce it to a sustainable level. And given the figures that we heard yesterday, that we're needing 2 planets, if everyone was to live a modest Australian lifestyle, we'd need 3 planets, then logically we need 2 billion people on the planet to be sustainable, plus or minus a bit of technology. The internet is a helpful factor and adds a little bit to the way forward, and can help the way we work. And you can see that I've spoken about the need to reduce fertility, this carrot and this stick, educating women, as we heard yesterday, the Grameen Bank, microcredit, all these people who are working in those areas, and we've heard some of those stories yesterday. Optimistically, we humans have faced adversity before. When the tough gets going, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, as they say. We have a consciousness of who we are and where we are in the scheme of things. We should not repeat the mistakes made at Easter Island. Easter Island was effectively its own little isolated world. Now the planet there's no place in the world isolated like that, like Angkor Wat or some of the places in South America. So we're all in this together, and we all know where we're going, and hopefully we can come to some sort of a global consensus. Hard. Where are we going? Well, this is where the experts say we're going. Congratulatory tones come out over the press. Oh, congratulations, Australia's reached 21 million people. What a great thing. We need a change in attitude. There needs to be a change in attitude that says that's not a good thing. So contrary to the beliefs of some, sustainable population Australia does not favour trees and birds over humans. It does not hate humans, but it recognises that the complex web of life on Earth and ultimately human welfare depends on the health of the whole system of the planet, the web of life. If we take care of that, we look after ourselves. In the end, if we fail, the Earth's ecology will prevail and human life will become much, much worse before it gets better, if it does. So again, we've had some talk about how we need to measure economic growth, and we should be measuring the number of people smiling, or the education achievement, or the self-fulfillment of people. I'm not sure that this... oh yes, it did come up. Fantastic. I don't know why this one came up and the other ones didn't. But luckily, if you plug in all those factors that we saw this morning about, if we plot up all these variables like non-renewable resource consumption, food production, and all the factors that flow into food production, industrial output, pollution index and so forth, thousands of variables that you can, some of which we heard about in this morning's session. You plug that into a computer and you get a nice smooth line, which is the population line there. And what it shows is population peaking in about 2025 at 7.3 billion people and then falling away. I feel that's a computer-generated line based on the inputs that have been forecast. Now, the outcome will not be a smooth line. It'll be a very wobbly line. But I think that is, I think we're probably past the point where we can really, manage this. I think it's going to happen, and this shows the Earth's population coming back to 2.5 billion people by 2100, really, as one thing follows the other, with peak oil and peak resources, peak gold, peak food. It's pretty logical to draw that grey line and say, well, that's what's going to happen to the population on the planet. And with that happy note, I'll leave you.
Thank you, Peter. As Richard Heinberg gave the title to his book, Peak Everything, including Peak Population. Now a question down here.
John, could I just say, we have the president of ACT Peak Oil here, Alex Pollard. We have the president of ACT Peak Oil here. If anyone would like to join ACT Peak Oil, see Alex. This man.
Thank you. I'm David Wyatt. Just curious use of conventional language that you just made when you described the two alternatives of subsistence living or participation in what you call the real economy. I'm wondering whether that sort of terminology is now getting a bit dated, particularly if we listen to the whole picture of this weekend, that what we're now describing as the real economy is probably quite unreal, and probably the best we have to look at in terms of reality is a subsistence.
Point taken. What can I say?
Right back
Just related to peak oil, you mentioned the influence of the fossil fuels on food production. What many people here probably don't know is organisations like Rodale and other organisations in the organic ag field have been saying that much of what you're getting from the fertiliser companies is now a myth. They're not actually increasing production, they're only maintaining production with their fertiliser technologies. Some of our organic ag systems are now as productive as the artificial industrial agriculture systems, and what we need to do is tool up for a transition to organic ag on a fairly large scale. That will give us also, into the bargain, significant carbon sequestration into the world's soils. The tendency is to see ecology as outside that list of technologies that are part of our agricultural systems. Those of us who've been struggling to try and push organic ag have been banging our heads against Department of Agriculture idiots for, 5 decades now, and running into walls everywhere because they don't get it. We can produce as much food from a properly designed organic ag system as you can from a fossil fuel-based ag system. You require more skill and you require more attention to your farm and lots of tricky techniques. We've got a gentleman here who does the work.
All I can say is bring it on.
Yeah, we need to push that.
Just two supply-side comments on the oil, global oil supply. I think because of OPEC's way of controlling production, the OPEC countries announced some pretty amazing increase in reserves, which I think reflect just convenience, not real oil in the ground. But because they're government controlled, we don't know how much oil they actually do have in the ground in those OPEC countries. And also because of the enhanced production, which Saudi's engaged on over the last 10 years or so, or 20, 30 years, where they injected water into the ground, that will both extend the peak for a bit, but cause both a sharp drop-off on the far side and also leave a lot of oil in the ground that can't be got at all, so damaging the total reserve and causing a drop-off at the end, which is more steep than perhaps we might expect.
Two comments there. One is that during the OPEC sort of rise, after it came into OPEC really turned the screws in the early 70s, and the oil price went from $4 to sort of $8, $12, and then from $12 to $32. And at the time they had their quota system, the quotas were set on the basis of the stated reserves that each country had. So magically overnight, all the countries, raised their reserves so they could produce more, cheating against one and the other. And those reserves haven't changed really for the last 20 years, even though they've been producing, Saudi Arabia produces about 9.5 million barrels a day, and the reserves remain the same. So the reserves in the Middle East are a big question mark.